This is a Psion Organiser attached to the PCB that used to be inside my old comms link or RS-232 link. Now I've taken this off, which is the cable that goes to the 25-way D-type, because that's not really on any computers anymore these days. I haven't actually attached that to anything for ages. So this board is actually quite a general purpose board. If you look on the internet you can find pinouts for various devices that attach to this 12-way connector over here. When it's a comms link or an RS-232 link, it's some of the lines at this end. If it's a barcode reader, it's lines at this end which aren't connected when it's a comms link. It turns out that you can attach devices other than RS-232 devices to this PCB, and that's what I've done here. I've got a Bluetooth module which is wired up to power on the 12-way connector, and on the other side of the board I've removed the MAX232 IC, which is here, and I've wired transmit and receive directly to the transmit and receive signals which go to the Psion. So they're 5-volt levels, not the level shifted signals on the other side. So now the Psion will see the Bluetooth module instead of the MAX232 and the RS-232 connector when it powers up. Because it's using serial data, there's no difference. It can't tell the difference between it being an RS-232 interface chip and it being a Bluetooth adapter. Now if we turn it on, and then let's have a look at the light there, and then press the on key, it'll scan then for devices, and you can see that the red light flashed briefly there. That is the ROM being powered up, which powers the whole board up and powers the Bluetooth up as well, being powered up and being read by the Psion and then powered down again, which means the module's gone off again. Now if you scroll back, comms is there, so if we go into comms and go into setup, you can see that I've got 9600 N81, no handshaking, no protocol. Because there's no hardware handshaking lines here, we've just got transmit and receive, we don't want any handshaking. We exit from there and go into the term mode. Now this is a permanent mode, and now the Psion is actually powering up the LS244 here, which is providing access from the Psion top slot interface through to whatever hardware is attached to the other side of that 244, which in this case is the serial interface to the Bluetooth module or RS-232 if that was wired up. So I bring in my trusty Gemini. If I now attach to a device called ABC, or actually equals ABC, you can see that the red light is now solid, or should be, and the connection's lost again. Let's go and connect to it again. So now it's solid over here. I can actually type here and you can see AA, B, B, C and hit enter, and it's scrolling up, and I can send back text and you can see that hello has appeared. I've got some text on a soft key here on my terminal, and procstat and hello, and I can send characters backwards and forwards. So that is working, and that's pretty useful. You've got a terminal there which is fairly useful, so it would be useful to transmit. Now you see the power's gone off because I've exited from the terminal program. It would be useful to transmit stuff, and unfortunately there's a little bit of a problem there, because it turns on, runs some ROM code or accesses hardware, and we're going to send a main. Now at the moment the Bluetooth module's off because the hardware hasn't been powered up, because this Psion was expecting, or at least the code in the ROM here was expecting, to be able to power up the RS-232 just before it sends the file, send the file, power it down again. So if we send the file, you'll see that the module turns on and immediately turns off again. Now it hasn't had time to connect, because it takes a few 100 milliseconds or something to connect a Bluetooth module to another Bluetooth device. So sending stuff doesn't actually work if you just wire it up like this. Receiving, however, does. So if I go there and receive main, now it's powered up permanently. So it's already set the hardware up to receive. So I think that would actually work. I append. It's now waiting for some data to come over. If I sent some, I don't have a file on my Gemini that I can send. That I think would work. You'd be able to receive data. So as a means of attaching RS-232, this is great if you're using a MAX 232, it works fine, but Bluetooth, because it needs this extra time to connect, which the RS-232 level shifter chip doesn't need, it means that transmitting to this thing doesn't actually work because it's powered down. Now what you could do is you could put a battery on this module and power it with a diode, and you could actually power, could you? Well, anyway, you could maybe run a diode from the Psion over and power it that way, or you could just power this from a battery, in which case it would be powered up all the time and transmit would work as well. So that would be an interesting way of attempting to get this working in a more practical fashion. Let's turn it off. If you put the module there, then it's sort of maybe possible to get that module to fit in the original comms link box. It'll be a bit of a squeeze, and you'd also need a battery or some other power source to do the transmit, but it would work with receive. Transmit and receive, and also the terminal emulator would work off the Psion's battery. You could actually replace this module with a serial to USB module, and in that case you would end up with a USB adapter, well, albeit a little bit bulky with wires all over the place, or any other device which has got a serial data output or interface. So you could have I2C or things like that. How you interact to something like I2C is another matter, because that doesn't use plain text. The USB to serial adapter, you could probably just then send and receive files over USB. So this is another way of interfacing, in this case, a Bluetooth module to a comms link, but you remove the cable. You don't have a cable running out to the adapter with some wiring and so on. You've got a module which, well, maybe I think with some, you might be able to fit that in that case, or a slightly larger case. The form factor is very similar, and it does actually fit on top. I haven't got my case here at the moment. I've lost the case that this came in. It's somewhere. But it might be possible to build a unit then which is pretty compact and can at least receive. The problem then is you need a battery to do the transmit, so without rewiring something, it's a bit tricky. There is another option for transmit, and that is to go inside this ROM and change the contents of the ROM so that when you are transmitting, you actually switch on the Bluetooth module, probably at the menu option, before you press the EXE button, which would use more power if you left it at that menu option, but at least then it would work. So you could maybe do that and then drop it at the end, maybe after a delay after you've transmitted the file. But obviously that involves getting into that ROM, disassembling it, understanding it, and then changing the code and debugging it and so on and getting it working. But it's another way of using these boards and a way of getting a Bluetooth interface. I've got an HC05 here as well, and that should attach. I've put it in, it powers up and so on, but this isn't programmed at the moment with the proper devices and so on. And this should work as well, and this is a master device, or is capable of being a master device. You can program it, which you'd have to do separate to the Psion, because although all you do is you press the button and you can program it over the serial link with various parameters, unfortunately it uses a higher baud rate than the Psion can actually generate, which is a bit of a shame. I think it's 115200 rather than 9600, which is the maximum the Psion can do. But that should work as well, so that would act as a master, connect to a device, and then you'd be able to talk to the device using the Psion. Again, you've got the power problem for receiving, but a battery and a couple of diodes, and that should sort that out.